Welcome to Executive Leaders Radio, your spot in the corner office, the radio show where executives share their secrets to success. Executive Leaders Radio.
You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio, broadcast from Greater Philadelphia. This is your host, Herb Cohen, with my co-host, Shannon Lane, Newmark Knight Frank, Drew Hanlon, Matthew Shapiro, Obermeyer, Christine Miles. Equipped people are my co-hosts. And Shannon, can you give us a rundown on who's on the air with us today?
Sure, Herb. We have a great show today. We have John Seitz, Managing Partner of Mayo Seitz Media, April Barkassi, President and CEO of Cedarville Engineering Group, Ade Lawal, President and owner of Express Employment Professionals of Philadelphia, and Donovan West, President and CEO of African American Chamber of Commerce of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware.
Let's get to know our first guest, John Seitz, Managing Partner of Mayo Seitz Media. John, what is Mayo Seitz Media? What are you guys doing?
We're a media buying and planning firm.
Mm-hmm. How long you been around in the greater Philadelphia area?
We've been in business for 24 years, sir.
And how'd you get a job with this company?
I was a co-founder with my business partner.
Where you from originally?
I'm from Wilmington, Delaware.
And how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I am the third of three. I have a brother and a sister.
Youngest of three. All right, yeah. Christine, you got them.
Yeah, John, growing up, you mentioned in the green room you played a lot of sports, football, track, swimming. But track was really where you learned some valuable lessons. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. When you run track, you are both an individual and often on relay teams. And I learned early on how much I don't like to lose. I learned that, when you lose, you have to accept it and move on and try to make yourself better for the next time. And being a part of many relay teams, I also learned that you have to be part of a team to be successful often.
You mentioned you were exposed out on the track, that you were really exposed out there. Is that digging a little bit more about what that meant and how that taught you losing became a valuable lesson for you?
Well, when you're running, it's pretty much you against the others. And unlike in a team scenario where you're surrounded by football players in a huddle, it's you out on the track. And when there's people watching, they see you either win or lose or do well or not do well. And it's pretty exposing.
John, who was somebody that you looked up to when you were a kid?
I have an older brother, and I looked up to him quite a bit, respected him greatly.
What was he like?
He was an athlete as well as a smart guy, and always respected his intelligence and his just the way he looked at things in a logical basis and not in a irrational, off-the-handle type situation.
You used the word respect now twice to describe your brother. It sounds like you did respect him. How does that affect the way you've been building your team the past 24 years?
It taught me that. How you doing? It taught me that you need to respect those around you. I'm doing one. Respect those who you surround yourself with. Respect their abilities, respect their intelligence, and respect the fact that working together is often and usually much better than working alone. Because if you don't respect those who you're with, then you tend to not take what they say as important or
John,
valuable.
in the greater Philadelphia area, over in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, there were about 300 agencies, most of which are dead. They've died. And for some reason, you've been able to survive and thrive over 24 years. Do you think that one of the things that made you be able to survive and thrive over 24 years is implicitly you have respect for your teammates?
Absolutely. Especially in today's world, you have to respect the fact that a younger generation brings an entirely new dynamic and an entirely new skill set to your point, Herb, to an older industry. Our industry changes like most do on an almost daily basis, the way technology changes.
So as opposed to you being a dictator and telling everybody what to do, you really listen to people. Drew?
Yeah, John, you mentioned in the green room that your upbringing was strange. I'm just curious what you meant by that.
Well, I had a rather domineering father who didn't exhibit, I think, some of the qualities that certainly I and both my brother exhibit, which is mutual respect, which is it's not always my way or the highway. There's a lot of other opinions out there that make sense, and you need to listen to.
Are you saying that by watching your father and his behavior, you pivoted and you do the opposite? Is that true?
Absolutely. But when my father passed away, it wasn't that there was a lack of love. But both my brother and I talked a lot about, hey, man, we learned how not to be in a lot of cases, and realized that other people have a lot to offer, and it's not just a myopic view at life.
And when you ran track, did your mom and dad show up at the track meets?
They did. My dad was actually a track official, and my mother was in the stands for every meet, and used to bring sandwiches and would cheer us on, and was very supportive that way.
What did that mean to you to be able to look over and always see your parents there for you?
It was good and bad. My dad tended to be more critical, and my mother was more supportive. And when I did well, it was great. And when I didn't do well, my mom would say, that's okay. And my dad would say, you got to try harder.
And how did that change how you are with your kids today, especially your son?
Much differently. Youth sports is interesting, as you know, Drew, you're involved in it as well. And learned how to be a little bit more tolerant, and it's not just win at all costs. And there is a lot to be learned and lose.
Isn't that the same behavior and the same culture you've created at Mayo Sites?
We certainly try to. People make mistakes. People make errors. No one, I said to my father once, Dad, if I meant to do it, it would be called on purpose. And it's not. It's called an accident. And accidents happen. And however, it's not like there's a country club atmosphere where you don't have to learn from your mistakes. That's key. And I learned from my mistakes in losing sometimes. Sometimes I lost in sports because of a technique or because I wasn't prepared or something like that. So we try to instill that with our employees at Mayo Sites. But hey, it's okay to try new stuff. It's okay to fail.
So John, do you bring more running the company? Do you bring more from your mother or your father?
I would say both, Matthew. I definitely feel as though, since my father was the more dominant one, and it sounds a little counterintuitive, but not to repeat myself, we learned how not to be. And every day I think, you know what, don't do that. Do this.
And
instead.
What about your mom? What do you bring from your mom in the way you run the company?
Support, understanding, caring, compassion.
Earlier,
Herb said earlier.
Yeah. You used the word love, and we were trying to figure out, what does love have to do with building a media buying agency? That's blood and guts. It's all negotiation.
It is, but not when you employ a group of people that need to be blood and guts, but diplomatically, have that blood and guts mentality, but with respect, and have that blood and guts mentality with an end goal that isn't just, I'm going to hammer you over the head and get what I want. Relationships are very important in what we do.
You're involved in the industry, Drew. What's John's reputation?
Oh man, it's I'm glad you asked me. I mean, they are like the little engine that could, in my opinion. And the question I wanted to ask that I think brings us out as well is, what would Ray tell us? So John has a partner, Ray, who's just a wonderful man. These guys are like unbelievable, the culture they've created, the business they've created. And what would Ray tell us about you, John?
Probably similar to what I've described today. He and I are similar in that we both hate losing. Losing sucks. And we also both respect the fact that you can learn from losing, and you can either learn to make yourself better. But more than anything, we didn't get trophies when we lost as kids. We learned how to grab ourselves by the back of our pants and move on. And you gotta push to the next time and either learn from your mistakes or you're going to be in trouble.
So Herb, my answer would be relationships, really. I mean, everywhere you go, it doesn't matter if John and I walk into a diner or we go to a concert together. He knows everybody and everybody gives him a big hug. So what he's describing here is really spot on.
It's interesting also that he had a really close relationship with his brother. Usually, brothers fight. But what John told us earlier was that he had a lot of respect for his brother. And that's a really tough industry. Your place, your group of people must be a pretty close-knit, tight group of people. It must be a good place to come to work. Am I seeing that correctly, John?
Yeah, we certainly try. I mean, I'm not going to pretend my brother didn't pin me down.
And what's the benefit to your clients of your close-knit team, of what you and your brother spoke about after your father passed away?
Well,
what's the benefit to your clients?
We have teams that work on all of our clients, and I think that the teamwork aspect of Mayo Sites comes through every day. And our clients realize that if John's not available, there's always somebody else that has my back, and we have a group of people who work on each business.
Yeah, you got longevity there. My guess is that as opposed to the team turning over, which could be very disconcerting for a client, you got people there for a long time. What's the website address of this organization known as Mayo Sites?
MayoSitesMedia.com.
Let me have that one more time.
MayoSitesMedia.com.
We've been speaking with John Seitz, managing partner of Mayo Sites Media here on Executive Leaders. We'll be back in a moment right after this break. You now can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com. Yes, you can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com. Simply visit ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com, securely enter their info, and we'll reach out to spotlight your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com. Don't wait. This radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable to your advisors. Yes, this radio and online social media exposure is free and quite valuable to your business advisors who deserve to be recognized. Visit ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com now to nominate your deserving business advisors. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce April Barkassi.
Yes.
Who is the president and CEO of Cedarville Engineering Group. April, what is the Cedarville Engineering Group? What are you guys doing?
We're civil and environmental engineers and construction managers.
How large or how small is this firm?
28 strong.
28 strong. How many brothers and sisters do you have?
2 older brothers.
And where are you from originally?
Delaware County.
What makes Delaware County special? Because in Arizona, they're not going to know what Delaware County is.
Delaware County is right outside of Philadelphia, and we tried to be a lot like Philly, and we're tough.
Oh, you're tough, huh? What was going on with you 8 to 14 years old?
I was living in my home with my single mom who was raising me and my brothers were older and in and out of the house.
Mm-hmm. And where was Dad?
Dad had moved out at 5 years old, and he, at the time, was living in Houston.
So why did he move out of the house when you were 5 years old?
The parents got divorced.
Okay. So tell me, what was it like living in that house when you were 6, 7, 8, 9 years old with your mom?
It was very tumultuous, and it was kind of sad. My mom had her own sets of problems to deal with, and trying to support a house and keep my brothers together was a challenge.
Mm-hmm. And how'd you feel?
I was very isolated, and it was a very difficult time to as a child to understand everything going on.
Mm-hmm. Did you tell me that you were trying to find a way out, that you wanted a place of your own or something like that? What was that all about?
That was always my dream. That's all I ever fantasized about, was growing up and being independent and being able to control those things that I could control.
Mm-hmm. How'd you get a job with this firm called Cedarville Engineering Group?
I started it 10 years ago, 2010.
Mm-hmm. How old were you when you started it?
35.
Mm-hmm. Married or single when you started it?
Married with 3 kids.
Didn't you realize that most businesses fail and it's probably crazy to go start your own business?
I'm sure it was crazy, but I didn't see failure as an option. I was going to make a go of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Drew?
Like at those young years to see your mom.
Drew, come on up closer to that mic.
I was just wondering now what it was like to see your mom struggling during your younger years.
It was very painful. She worked very hard, but she had a lot of health problems. She was not a well woman, and mostly stress from her past influencing her life. So it was very difficult for me.
And didn't you tell us that you used to like to get away from home sometimes by going over to your friend's house?
Yeah, I had a few really good friends through that time period, elementary school, middle school, that I would spend most weekends at their house.
And why was that important to you to do that?
There was a family bonds in each of those houses. They were not perfect families, but there was a lot more warmth and stability in those homes.
And what did those situations like that, warmth and stability, teach you about running the company you operate today?
People seek attention. They seek approval. They seek guidance, and I think that's something that I was missing and needed to impart in relationships I had.
Christine?
What's the one thing you bring to work from your mother every day?
She's a passionate woman, a stubborn too. So those are two things.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Christine?
So you were finding your other families and community when you were a young kid. You weren't just dreaming, you were already escaping, right? A different reality. So how does building that community really impact how you've managed this business through struggle as well as through good times?
I really love to work with smart people who like to work together. We can do much more together as a team than we could do individually.
Didn't you tell us earlier that a number of years ago there was some sort of a competitive predatory raid on your organization, and that you managed to keep things together even though people might have been able to get more money or get better benefits or whatever it was, perhaps going somewhere else? And I'm wondering if that ability, if that wantingness of yours for the oneness, you're going to go find these other families in the neighborhood and go hang out with them and sleep over there. And you're wanting to, that failure was not an option, no matter what, you were going to succeed. But your team really knew your values. They really knew that you wanted a united team. Is that probably one of the reasons that you were able to survive that predatory raid and really continue to grow the organization?
Absolutely. It was really rough, and without the details, that really isn't important, the details of it. But there was a faction in the company, and it really became evident that those who wanted to be there wanted to be there.
And they knew it because of you. They stuck around because of you. Shannon?
April, you don't see many women in engineering. Where did the courage come from to break into the industry?
My dad was an engineer, and he passed away when I was 16, but I had those skills of logic and math and science behind me. So it seemed like the right path, at 18 years old when you don't know anything about what you're doing.
And in the green room, you mentioned that Aunt Julie also played a role.
So my Aunt Julie was a serial entrepreneur and had different businesses and paths that she followed, but she was brave, and she always taught me to be brave as well, and not to give up when I saw something.
What did she teach you that you still carry with you today?
She taught me that courage to just go for it and to be brave, and what's the worst that could happen?
Mm-hmm.
Pick it up and go again.
Matthew?
April, you said your dad left at 5 and moved to Houston, but he was a huge part of your making it as an engineer. Tell me, what did he do to stay in your life?
Well, there was a period of time he was local, but in my teenage years, he moved to Houston, and he made sure to come home on weekends. He actually had worked it out with his company that he would live still in Pennsylvania, but commute weekly to Houston, and so that was huge that I had that time with him.
So he came back on weekends to spend time with you all the time. That's a long trip.
It is, and now that I'm an adult, I really appreciate that.
So what your dad did, the way he came back to see you, what does that have to do with the way you build your team today?
I think the relationship, the dedication is really comes through not just my dedication. The people that I surround myself with are passionate about the people that work there too. So we stick together and we have each other's back. And I think that's from the bottom up and the top down.
And you said your dad passed when you were 16, but what do you think he'd think about your company today if he could see it?
I think he'd be incredibly proud.
Why? Tell me why.
Well, engineering is a tough environment for a woman, and to make it 10 years and support 30, approximately 28 families right now. They're all relying on me, and I make sure I show up every day and do what I can to help their lives.
Christine?
Yeah, you just said it, the power of showing up. That's what I hear is your dad showed up in every weekend. And how are you showing up that really makes a difference? Like why are people sticking with you? How are you showing up?
Well, I try to check in with people. Doesn't always happen as much as it should be. Even a little bit of engineering introvert in me. But those people that have an opinion and want to share it with me, I have an open door. I want to hear what they have to say, and I want to explore what they want to do as well. And that keeps people happy. They're engaged, and we all successful.
It sounds like you really know how to build a team. No wonder those people stuck with you, and no wonder you're able to build this organization, because the glue that holds it all together is they know that you really care. It's like, as opposed to going to different families in the neighborhood, you're sitting down with all your different people and really getting to know who they are. What's the website address of this organization known as Cedarville Engineering Group?
CedarvilleENG.com.
Let me have that one more time.
CedarvilleENG.com.
We've been speaking with April Barkassi, who's the president and CEO of Cedarville Engineering Group here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com. That's executiveleadersradio.com. To learn more about our executive leaders. We'll be back in a moment right after this break. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, and we'd like to introduce Ade Lawal, who's president and owner of Express Employment Professionals of Philadelphia. Ade, what is Express Employment Professionals of Philadelphia? What are you guys doing?
Express Employment Professionals is a staffing and recruiting firm that helps companies in the Philadelphia area find people and help people find jobs at these companies.
Mm-hmm. Where you from originally?
Grew up in Lagos, Nigeria.
Uh-huh. And how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I'm second to four, two other brothers and a sister.
Uh-huh. And how young were you when you came to the United States, and why?
I was 16. I just graduated high school. I came to go to college here.
Came to go to college here. Okay, Drew, he's all yours.
Jay, what was going on 7 to 15 in Nigeria?
Most of that time I was in boarding school, public school, basically getting my secondary education.
And boarding school meaning like you went away to school and stayed overnight?
That's right. In Nigeria, a lot of the boarding schools are public schools, and you got a free education when you applied to these schools. And so that was what I did as well.
And what was the impact of that experience to you, the boarding school experience?
Well, I learned to be independent, because if you can imagine a kid that's 10, 11 years old going away to boarding school, that was quite an experience for me. I learned to grow up and take care of myself, everything from fetching my own water in the morning to take a bath.
And you mentioned earlier in the green room you're quiet. And so I'm just curious, how did you build relationships and make friends at school?
Well, academically, I excelled. So I was one of the students that helped a lot of students out in terms of getting better at schoolwork. And I made some friends through that.
And how did that experience at boarding school impact your leadership style?
Well, I'm definitely it's more of a servant leader. And so I think just that experience in boarding school, being on my own and wanting to help other people improve and do better and get the best out of people is something that impacted my leadership style.
And I'm guessing that getting your own water taught you that you can roll up your sleeves anytime and do the dirty work too.
Absolutely. One of the things I pride myself on is there's no job that anybody else in my company does that I can't do.
Shannon?
Ade, in the green room, you mentioned that you started going to work with your mom when you were 13 years old. Can you tell us what you were doing?
Sure. My mother was an entrepreneur. She owned a variety of businesses. At the time, she was running a cosmetics store, and I worked for her as a cashier and a customer service person.
And in the green room, we were able to bring out of you that you were actually the bookkeeper and would speak to your mom's clients. So what does that have to do with the way you're building your team today?
Well, I actually turned out to study accounting when I was in college. And I think part of that was the early exposure to bookkeeping and numbers and running a business. And I think that's part of the reason I actually became an entrepreneur eventually, because I worked for my mother, who at the time was an entrepreneur.
And what did you learn from your mom that you carry with you today?
Well, she was very driven, wanted to be successful. And I think not working for anyone, basically creating opportunities for other people as opposed to getting a paycheck every 2 weeks was something that I admired.
Mm-hmm. Matthew?
Yeah, for those of us who grew up in the United States, tell us what we need to understand about the difference between growing up here and growing up in Nigeria.
Well, the difference between growing up here in Nigeria and being in the United States is Nigeria is a third world country. So there are limited opportunities to succeed unless you're educated. And if you don't focus on your education and doing well in school, it's hard to get a job because there's no government safety net. So there's no such thing as welfare or anything like that. So if you don't succeed and you're not bringing in income, making your own money, then you basically are poor.
So tell me how you saw that lack of a safety net growing up in Nigeria.
Well, like I said, I started working for my mother when I was 13, and I spent a lot of time in the market with her. And in that market, a big market in Lagos, there are lots and lots of businesses. And so you can see the difference between the more successful entrepreneurs and businesses and those who are less successful.
And how did you feel seeing the people who were less successful?
Well, certainly it wasn't the situation you wanted to be in.
You wanted to help them. You wanted to help them, didn't you?
Well, I mean, if anything, I'd say it really drove me more to focus on being successful.
But that's really what you're doing today. I mean, you've talked about growing up fetching water, and you talked about helping people academically where you excelled and we're proud of your accomplishments. That's really what you're trying to do now. You're trying to get people to where they don't need the safety net, right? I mean, that's what you're all about.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things I take pride in is the fact that our business essentially is focused on helping people find jobs, feed their families, and do well financially. And so it's very important to me to have something and to do something every day that I wake up and I'm proud of. And that's what. Go ahead. How
do you feel when you accomplish a successful placement?
The time it really hits us is when the person gets a job or is proud of what they do and they come back to thank us. Initially.
What do you mean they come back and thank you? That's not common from what I hear. Most of the recruiting firms, they don't really pride themselves. They tell you that they're going to try to place the right person in the right job, but it sounds like you do. So they come back and thank you? What are you talking about?
Over the years, we've had so many instances where someone comes back after being hired permanently at a job and comes back and sends a letter to my team or brings a note in. And that's an occasion for us to take pride in what we do and to share in that as a team. Mm-hmm. And it's happened so many times. And sometimes it's very emotional how grateful these folks are that they've been able to succeed in life and move up another tier because of a job that we got them.
It's emotional to you?
Absolutely.
You're running a business. What do you mean it's emotional to you? What are you talking about?
Well, part of the reason I chose this business was because I wanted to help people. And if we're able to do that, that's something that's a direct tie-in into who I am and what makes us excited to come to work every day.
Didn't you tell us when you were a kid that you felt that you were one of the more intelligent kids and the other kids would come to you for help at school and that you felt that you could help them and you felt like you were admired and you felt very proud that you were able to help the other kids? It sounds like you're the essence of what really is a servant leader. It sounds like you're really driven by the purpose and the meaning of helping change other people's lives. Is that fair?
That's fair to say. I mean, my personal philosophy is to whom much is given, much is expected. So I do feel like I've had plenty of opportunities, got a good education, have an opportunity to create and buy a company and run it. And so it's important to definitely give back to those who are less fortunate.
Christine?
Yeah, I think beyond helping, it's really empowering, but it's fascinating that the lens was on you a lot in your schooling, but you're shifting the lens to be on other people. When did that start to show up when you were a kid? You're in school, you're helping kids academically, but why was that important to you? Was it your mom, your dad? Where did that come from?
Well, I mean, I was a little bit of a shy kid when I was growing up, so I didn't necessarily like the spotlight. So I've learned to be a little more social and engage with people, but I'm still not one who likes to be in the spotlight very much or talk about what I'm doing or accomplishing.
So you like to put the spotlight on other people?
That would be my preference.
Sounds like that's what you're doing in your business, helping people be in the spotlight so they can find a better life and a new career or a new job or new opportunity.
That's fair to say.
How does that make you feel?
I feel very proud of what we do and I feel very accomplished at the end of the day. I know that if the company succeeds, that means more people are going to work and more people are being successful in life. That's important.
What do you appreciate that I may not? I was born in the United States. You were born in Nigeria. What do you appreciate that I don't appreciate?
That's a tough one.
Mm-hmm. Come on.
I think that without an education, there's lots of people who succeed and do well in this country. And that's very, very rare coming from Nigeria.
What do you mean?
So some of the most successful entrepreneurs in this country never went to college.
As opposed to,
that's just something you don't see very much
in Nigeria.
Yeah, where I grew up in Nigeria.
So, was your mom a servant leader?
She was, it was very admirable. What she did with the folks that worked with her and how she treated people, and that's something that I certainly learned from.
Do you remember watching how she treated people when you were youth?
People who worked for her were very loyal. She had some employees that worked with her for 15, 20, 25 years. And, that's part of what I learned from her was how you treated people, impacted their loyalty to you and how supported they were and what you wanted to accomplish in life.
And what do you hear her whispering in your ear, when you're faced with a tough decision today?
Well, whenever I'm faced with a tough decision, I revert to who I am instinctively and my personality and who I am as a person. And I think that's really what helps you make the right types of decisions.
Sure, yeah.
You kind of go with your gut.
What is the website address of Express Employment Professionals of Philadelphia, Ade?
ExpressPros.com.
ExpressPros.com. We've been speaking with We've been speaking with Ade Lawal, president and owner of Express Employment Professionals of Philadelphia, here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com. That's executiveleadersradio.com. To learn more about our executive leaders. We'll be back in a moment, right after this break. Recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, Executive Leaders Radio. Yes, you can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Simply visit executiveleadersradio.com, securely enter their info, and we'll reach out to spotlight your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Don't wait. This radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable. Yes, this radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable to your business advisors who deserve to be recognized. Visit executiveleadersradio.com now to nominate your deserving business advisors for free exposure. Back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. And we'd like to introduce Donovan West, who's the president and CEO of the African American Chamber of Commerce, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware. Donovan, what is the African American Chamber of Commerce?
It's a membership organization that provides services to minority businesses in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware.
Mm-hmm. Can you give me an idea of how large or small the membership base is?
We have over 500 members.
Wow. And where are you from originally?
Jamaica.
And how young were you when you came to the United States, and where did you settle in the United States?
I was a baby. Mm-hmm. Settled in North Philadelphia. Allegheny, to be specific.
All right. How many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have a total of 7.
Tell us about that.
6 brothers, 1 sister. I'm number 3 on my mother's side and number 1 on my dad's side.
Number 3 on your mom's side, number 1 on your dad's side, and how come is that?
Well, Dad got kicked out of this country when I was 2 years of age and had to relocate in Jamaica and then in Canada.
Mm-hmm. So you were raised by a single mom in North Philly. Okay, Christine.
Yep. Yeah, your family was really very dispersed. You weren't all together.
That's correct.
As I understand. So how did you feel about being in Philadelphia? What was it like for you? How did you feel?
I felt like I was in hostile territory. I didn't have much of a support system. The majority of my family out of this country, residing in Canada, London, Jamaica. So, I felt pretty vulnerable, to be honest.
And a bit disconnected, perhaps, and a little alone?
Absolutely.
What's that, Christine?
What's that got to do with what you're doing today?
Well, being disconnected, when I was young, till this day, I'm all about the business of connecting businesses, connecting them to opportunities, providing the type of support that they need so that they can flourish.
Do you really think that that's like healing your past, the fact that you're doing this professionally, helping people connect with other people, sort of heals who you were back then as a kid?
Absolutely. It's a lifelong healing process.
Just wanted to make sure I understood. Drew?
Yeah, Donovan, I just kind of trying to put myself in your shoes and feel what it felt like to be, I almost like nervous at that time. But you told us a story when you were 7 about going to the food store. Can you tell us what happened there?
Yeah, I was being sent to the food store, and my mother gave me some money, and so I didn't see the money as being any different from any other money I've seen before. I'm used to seeing pounds and dollars, things of the nature from Europe and the Caribbean. So when I saw this money, I didn't see it as being any different. But when I got to the store and I got to the register, to be more specifically, there were some kids that were in line behind me that made gestures and comments about me being on welfare and that I had food stamps. The way that they teased me, I definitely felt some kind of way about it. Went home to mom, and mom basically, said, yes, those are food stamps, and you get them from this thing called welfare. Basically confirming that we were poor, right? But she said, son, I had a quick question to ask you. And I asked her, what's up? She said, were you able to get the same items that the other kids were able to get with the green dollars? And I said, yes. So she says, remember, despite the fact that people may look at you as being different, that you still have the same value, if not more. And just, that became something I held with me.
What is the impact of that on you today, that experience?
Same thing in terms of diversity, just understanding that while we may be different, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a lesser value, and making sure that we share that information across the board with our members in a personal and a professional space.
And just a final question for me is, what is the advice that you give to a kid in your similar situation today? Maybe feels a little different or is not operating at the same as others. Like, what would your advice be to them?
To embrace your differences, to embrace them, and to celebrate them in a way that you can understand both sides of the coin. So if you're in a space where predominantly it's not you, to understand that culture, and then also to celebrate your own culture so that you can be able to function as a chameleon if necessary, and at other times be distinguishing as your culture may present.
Shannon?
Can you tell us a little bit about your dad and what he was like when you were growing up?
My dad was I guess you can call him a caricature, right? Very animated, very personable, full of color, definitely very mobile. But at the end of the day, I think at the end of the day, he was someone that was a free spirit.
And in the green room, you mentioned that you would spend summers with him in Canada and spent some time helping him out at work. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, we would spend some, time with him in the summertime in Canada, helping him out with his business. He had a delivery business for a bakery company. And also he was a promoter of sorts. So, very personable, someone that, never met a person he didn't like, and was well respected in the neighborhood.
And what did you learn from those summers that has affected the way you lead your team today?
Well, what I've learned is that at the end of the day, it's really about, making sure that you're able to connect. It's about that personality, being able to understand and really be a good listener. When you listen to people, you're able to understand what their perspective is on things and learn how to better connect with them. So I definitely took that from his ability to interact with a cross-section of people and still get the same kind of positive results.
Mm-hmm. Matthew?
Donovan, you also told us in the green room about Pops. Who's Pops?
Oh, man, Pops, a.k.a. John Collins, a guy who definitely demonstrated, selflessness, someone who was well-educated, well-respected in his community in Liberia, but had to relocate due to civil unrest, and came over here to the States only to work a couple of manufacturing jobs and help out with his sons in terms of keep a roof over their head. When I saw the kind of environment that he created for his sons, and one of which I went to school with during my undergrad years, I asked if I could stay there after I was in transition from my apartment that I had. And he welcomed me and just reiterated the focus on education, the focus on, having a long-range goal and not getting caught up in, some of the distractions.
So wait a minute. Are you saying you lived with Pops for a while there?
I did. I lived with Pops for several years. I went from a house where I rented a house, a 3-story, 5-bedroom house that I rented when I was a sophomore at Penn State. And I had the option to buy it, but I didn't exercise it. And so when I was looking for my next apartment, I actually decided to lay on the living room floor of Pop's house, which was in Mount Airy. It was a 2-bedroom apartment. They did not have another bedroom for me, but I laid there and had greater peace than the 5-bedroom, 3-story house that I lived in prior.
And why'd you have more peace there? I'm in Mount Airy right now. Why'd you have peace there?
8039 Williams Avenue. That's where I lived, right there on the corner. So I had greater peace because there was this father figure who helped to keep me in a certain kind of space, right? And that is just focus on education, focus on the outcome. And at the end of the day, he had the rest. And in that kind of environment, that warm environment, it wasn't that nothing against my mother or anything like that. It was just a really warm environment that I felt compelled to say, hey, you know what? If you got a quilt, I'd love to I'd love to stay there in that space.
And what's that environment that he created got to do with what you're doing today?
It's about creating the kind of environment that is warm, it's inviting, it's a familial space. And that's why when we talk about the chamber, often when I'm talking to potential members, I'm saying, are you ready to come home? And so literally when you come into my office, there's a welcome mat and everything else. And when I'm talking to my team members, I'm saying, hey, you know what? Guess what? Martin is decided to come home, or Matt decided to come home. Herb decided to come home. Christine is coming home. And we rally around you and provide that kind of warmth.
You're really the aunt and the uncle and the pops, aren't you? Your team. Like you said familial. That's a powerful word, that you were not just home, but you were the aunt, the uncle, the father. It sounds like to me.
We are. It's comprehensive. It's holistic. But most importantly, it has the solutions to what you need, has your DNA all mixed in there so that it's easier to retain and it's easier to actually utilize going forward.
Matthew, why are you smiling like that?
Because I think we just got right to the heart of who Donovan is. It's amazing. It's terrific.
How do you see him? Oh, Drew?
Do you teach your membership to be chameleons?
I do. The goal is about making sure that at the end of the day, you demonstrate, number one, excellent listening skills, which means that you don't know what's about to come out of the mouth of your potential, partners or your customers. And number two, it's about making sure that you demonstrate that by way of how you next communicate, everything from your body language, marketing material, your correspondence, the whole nine. It should be a good demonstration of your audience, and it's really not about you. You have to reiterate.
Donovan, what's the website address? What's the website address of the African American Chamber?
AAChamber.org.
Let me have that one.
AAChamber.org.
AAChamber.org. We've been speaking with Donovan West, President and CEO of the African American Chamber of Commerce of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. Shannon, can you give us a rundown on who we had the opportunity of hanging out with today?
Sure, Herb. We had a great show today. We had John Seitz, Managing Partner of Mayo Seitz Media, April Barkassi, President and CEO of Cedarville Engineering Group, Ade Lawal, President and owner of Express Employment Professionals of Philadelphia, and just now Donovan West, President and CEO of African American Chamber of Commerce of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware.
Excellent. I would like to thank my co-hosts, including Shannon Lane, Newmark Knight Frank, Drew Hanlon, Matthew Shapiro, Obermeyer, and Christine Miles of Equipped People for giving me hand structure in the questions. They'll be providing our listening audience an educational and entertaining show. I'd like to thank our listening audience for listening. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a radio show. Don't forget to visit our website, executiveleadersradio.com, to learn more about our executive leaders. Thank you for joining us today, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.